All right, good morning, everyone. My name is JB with International Key Supply, and I'm glad to have you all here this morning. This is sort of an interesting time that we're living in with this COVID-19, but it's really opened up some opportunities for us to, meet together like this. We would typically probably all be pretty busy and wouldn't be able to do this. So this is a positive note of all these things that are going on around us. I hope that you guys are safe and healthy, and just do the best you can with this circumstance. We'll get through all this, and life will return to what it was before. It'll take some time, but just hang in there, everyone. Just a personal note. So this morning we are going to talk about the VVDI Key Tool Max. I'm going to spend a few minutes going through this tool with you guys. I'm going to kind of lecture on it, if you will, for a minute. And then we're going to go and do some live demonstrations. I'll switch to another camera. And then at the end of this presentation, or actually I should say the second half maybe, we're going to do a question and answer period where you guys can ask and answer the questions, ask the questions, I'll answer them. I affectionately call this Stump the Instructor. So be gentle, if you will, when you ask the questions. I don't consider myself an expert on any subject matter. I do have some experience though, and I'll do my best to answer your questions. We're going to take those questions in the form of the Q&A feature on Zoom here that we're using. I see that looks like there's a couple of question and answers. There's also a chat forum. It's pretty tough to handle both of those mediums as the panelist here. So if you'll just put your questions on the question and answer, we're going to go through them together. I already have some questions. Some folks sent in their questions already, and I'm going to answer those first. Also here with us is one of my coworkers, Zena, out of a New York office. I think she's in here with us. Let me double check.
I'm here.
Oh, very good, Zena. Thank you very much. Zena's going to help us, probably help me to stay organized and on task. She's going to help with answering the question and answer period where I won't actually have to type the answers. I'll just speak them. She'll type them in there for reference later. So thank you, Zena. Appreciate your help. For those of you who don't know me, again, my name is JB Gates with International Key Supply. I work for International Key Supply in the technical support department. I also am a locksmith, have a couple locksmith shops in Missouri. And before I started locksmithing, I was and still am a two-way radio technician. So I sold and serviced two-way radios like what police, fire, and EMS would use. So when I transitioned into locksmithing as more of a primary means of income, I focused on automotive. I do all kinds of locksmithing work, primarily focus on automotive. In the last 7 or 8 years, I've got very interested in safe servicing and safe opening, so I'm learning that part of the trade as well. I hope that this video can be helpful to you. One thing that I didn't mention is we're going to do this question and answer period. And if for some reason you do not feel comfortable typing your answers, maybe you're not a good typist, whatever, I am going to try to allow you guys to voice your questions. There are a lot of you in here currently. Looks like about 105 people. So that might get a little chaotic. If you don't or can't enter your questions in the Q&A feature and you do want to ask a question, there is a raise your hand feature that you can use here in Zoom. Try to do that for me. Raise your hand if you have a question. I will do my best to answer them all. Like I said, it's a large group of folks today, and we'll do our best with it. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I just want to make sure that I have invited everyone and allowed them to talk if they need to. Looks like we're good to go. Okay, so we are going to just do a rundown here of some basics. I have some notes, so you'll probably see me looking off frame a little bit, but this class, well, webinar, I guess it should be, typically I don't see a class this short. So this is an informational session, if you will. I'm just going to give you a brief overview of this tool. It might seem like, it's inch deep and a mile wide, and I apologize for that if it does seem that way, but there's so much this tool could do. There's no possible way we can cover it in an hour. So the way that I decided to do it was to just lay out some of the common features that I use with this tool on a daily basis. And then, like I said, open it up to Q&A, and hopefully we can cover a lot of ground. Don't be afraid to ask questions, maybe even if you're not sure if it's a good question or maybe it seems like a silly question. Ask it anyways. Probably someone else is thinking it, and we'll try to cover all of them that we can. Okay, so some of the common features of the VVDI Key Tool Max. Zena, can you see, excuse me, Zena, can you see the question and answers as a panelist?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. I'm going to try to monitor those too, but if you see me missing any of them, maybe you'll chime in. I got a couple here. I don't know, Jeff, if we got your microphone taken care of or not. If we didn't, let us know. Yes, we got a couple of other questions here. We'll answer those. Perfect. All right. So again, the common features that I use most oftenly on the key tool, you can use it to read and identify a transponder. Just drop a key or a transponder chip into the VVDI Key Tool Max, and you could actually read the ID, the chip type. Some extended information can be gained on certain transponders. It just depends what the capability is of the tool to read those extended pages, but that's something that can be done. Obviously, with this device, you can clone transponders, and you can clone pretty much everything you're going to see here in the U.S., all the way from, you know, maybe a Magmos 13, 4C, 4D, Philips 46, ID 48, and ID 48 CAN. So those are, you know, all the gamut that you're going to see servicing these cars here in the U.S. You can take an Xhorse universal remote, whether it is a standalone like a traditional key fob or a flip key or a prox key, and you could then use this tool to create that universal key into something that's specific for the vehicle that you're working with. So you can go through the listing, pick the specific application, and then you can create that universal remote or prox key, whatever it might be. And once you have that done, then you would program whether it's remote, flip key, prox key to the vehicle in the normal way that you would with whatever your favorite OBD programming tool is. Let me see real quick here. I see a lot of chat going on here. I don't know if it is related. Nope, it looks like that's you guys in between yourselves, so that's perfectly fine. Okay, and also with the introduction of the Xhorse super chip, you can now take that super chip that is can be used for multiple purposes, not only just cloning, but you can also take that chip, you can create it into now a transponder that can be programmed to a vehicle using, again, whatever your favorite OBD key programmer is, you know, Smart Pro or T-Code, whatever. But with that super chip, like I said, you're able to use the Key Tool Max in order to configure it and then program that transponder to the car. That's something new. Quote unquote clonable chips have not been able to do this in the past. So it's a pretty big deal. This Xhorse super chip is super versatile. You can use it for all the cloning features that you need, that you have access to in the tool, and then also creating these transponders. So it's a pretty big deal, and the cost of that Xhorse super chip is pretty low. You can do remote signal tests, so you can see the frequency of a remote that you're working with. Maybe you want to know if the battery is good, or maybe a customer says certain functions of the remote don't work. You could test all the functions of the remote. There's some visual and some audible indications on the tool. I'll show you that here in a bit. You can test the antenna ring in a vehicle. So the actual device that when you turn the key on, it energizes, and it looks for a signal from the transponder in the key. And if that antenna ring is not functioning, then the vehicle can't read the ID of the transponder key. This can be super helpful in troubleshooting problems, or maybe you have a car that's all keys lost and you're programming the key to it, and you can't get the key to program, and you're not sure what the situation is. You can use the Key Tool Max to check the antenna coil and see if it's actually energizing when the key turns on, see if it's actually looking for a signal from the transponder. So you can do some unlocking of keys and remotes with the Key Tool Max. You can unlock most Toyota and Lexus smart keys wirelessly, as long as the battery is good in the smart key. And then there's also some unlocking features for remote headed keys, prox keys, that sort of thing, where you connect an auxiliary cable to the key tool, and then you would either solder wires down to the circuit board of the key that you're working with, or you might make yourself some clips to hold on. There's 4 connections that need to be made. Or there's also a set of, well, actually I think now 2 or 3 sets of adapters that Xhorse has come out with that you can take the circuit board out of the shell of the key and insert it into this specific adapter, and then with a cable hook that adapter to the key tool and do the unlocking of the key. Reason why you might want to unlock that key, if you don't know what I'm talking about, is so that you can reuse it. There's a lot of these keys that are reusable, and once they're unlocked, they can be programmed to another vehicle, so that's a helpful thing. If any of you guys are familiar, they call it an EML battery in a BMW or Mini Cooper key. So on the BMW or Mini Cooper keys, embedded in the head of the key is actually a battery that's soldered to the board, and that battery actually charges when the ignition is on and the vehicle is running. And that's how the remote keyless entry functions work, is that battery gets charged through the ignition coil. And so you can actually charge those EML batteries with this tool. You can, if you have a working key for a Hyundai or a Kia vehicle, you can use that working key in conjunction with the key tool, and you could actually sniff the data that goes between the key and the car, and you can extrapolate the PIN code for programming an additional key. This is helpful because quite a few programmers out there on the market don't read these PIN codes for you, and then you either have to have a piece of software that converts them, or you have to purchase the PIN code from NASDAQ, or however you do it. But this Key Tool Max will allow you to take that working key that you already have that's programmed, and then through a process sniff the PIN code from Kia and Hyundais. So that's really kind of the basic overview of this tool. I mean, I know that was probably super vast. I get accused of talking quickly a lot. So what I want to do now is I want to go ahead and switch over to the camera where you can actually see the key tool. And I want to go through some of these features, maybe a little bit slower pace, talk about a few more that I think won't make sense unless you're looking at the key tool. And then we'll go ahead and go into our question and answer session. So give me 1 second here. Let me get my camera switched. Bear with me 1 second. Okay, now if everything went right, you guys should see a picture of the Key Tool Max on a stand. If you guys all see that, somebody just raise their hand for me, or unmute their mic and tell me they see it. Okay. Okay, yep, I see. We got a bunch of hands going up. Appreciate that, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. And again, if I didn't say, I really appreciate you guys joining us here today, and that I have this opportunity to show you these things. So here we go. So here is the Key Tool Max. And this is actually, you know, my Key Tool Max that I use. Something that I wanted to mention to you guys is I'm going to go ahead and drop down my webcam video for a minute while I am out of frame here, so you don't have to look at my shoulder or whatnot. And you guys are all able to still see the key tool, correct? Somebody raise their hand for me if you can see the key tool. Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, so this is actually the key tool that I use myself. It's powered on here. Some things that I'd like to talk with you about here just for a second while we have it on this screen. You see this here, and you see there's a specific number of bonus points, specifically here, 425 bonus points. So if you're not familiar with these bonus points, every time you create a universal remote, universal prox key, or prepare a transponder, like create a usable transponder from an Xhorse super chip, you gain these bonus points. And bonus points can be used for all sorts of things. You can use them to purchase tokens. Let's say you have other Xhorse products, like let's say you have the VVDI MB tool, and it takes a token for calculating the password on Mercedes cars. You can take these points and you can convert them to tokens. You can actually go on a portal and use these bonus points to purchase things from Xhorse if you want to. So if you see here, 425 bonus points on my tool. The thing that's different about the Key Tool Max than what has been in the past of the other versions of this tool, so like the original version Key Tool and the Key Tool Mini, is that when you used one of these, created one of these remotes or transponders, you immediately collected your bonus points. Well, now you've got to actually ask to have the bonus points transferred to you. So what I mean by that is after you convert a remote or create a transponder, you've got these bonus points, but you actually have to click on this here where it says more, potentially. I actually don't have any more points to collect, but what will happen is this number of points here will actually increase when you click on more. It will actually go to the server and tell the server, okay, these are the remotes and these are the transponders that you created, and then actually allow you to get the bonus points. Reason why I'm telling you this is because to turn on the ID48 96-bit cloning on this, you actually have to accumulate some points. You have to use 10 wireless remote keys. And I've had people say, well, I used the 10 wireless remote keys and I can't get the ID48 96-bit authorization to work. So what you have to do is you have to then click on this where it says more, and you'll actually get the points. I see that you guys are asking about getting the camera a little bit closer. It's just super tough. I wish that I could do this better. This is the only setup that we currently have at this point. We're working on something that will display this a little bit better. So if it's hard to see, my apologies. This is the best that I can get it at this particular point. Like I said, if you have these bonus points, they're sitting there, you can't use them until you click more and they're actually transferred to your account. I'll touch on bonus points since we're here. There's multiple screens on the Key Tool. I'm on the Key Tool Max screen right now, but if I hit one of these arrows here, I can actually transfer through the menus, and as you see, there's multiple menus. So we have, you can control the Dolphin from this actual device here, where if you own this Dolphin, you know that it gets controlled through your mobile phone or your tablet. So you can actually use the Key Tool Max to control your Dolphin and consolidate your devices. There's also this mini OBD tool that is going to connect to the Key Tool Max and allow you to do some programming of transponder keys to vehicles. I don't actually have one of these yet. They're just starting to hit the market, so I can't tell you too much about that because I don't have one currently. But this was the screen I wanted to get to here. This is what they call the hello screen, or what I call the hello screen, because it says hello right up here if you can read that. You can see the total number of bonus points you have, and if you can see this here, this says device count. So what happens is once you register for an account with Xhorse, you bind all your tools together in one account, and then the bonus points can share from device to device. So if you have multiple Xhorse tools, you have a VVDI MB, you have a VVDI 2, you have whatever, make sure you combine them all together on one account. That way you can share your bonus points. And something else while we're here on this hello screen is kind of a good thing to know, understand what you can see here. You've got a news feature. If you click on the news feature, you're going to be able to see whatever updates are happening currently with Xhorse. You've got remote update. You see there was a double points promotion that went on. And if you actually go ahead and click on one of these updates, you should be able to see all the information in the update. This one is actually the remote database, and it gives you an idea of what remotes were added and what remotes were changed because of bugs or what have you. So the news section is a good section to understand here in this hello screen. Also, you have this online service down here, a little bit hard to see maybe, but if you click this online service, it's actually going to connect you on a chat function with a person at Xhorse to help you do technical support. If for some reason there's some trouble you can't reach us, or it's more convenient, you can actually contact the manufacturer directly here with this online service. And then also there is down here in this bottom right, there is an account tab. You can click on this account tab, and what that'll do is bring up your account in its entirety, where you can see all of the devices that you have, the serial numbers, the bonus points that are accumulated between all the devices, and you know, maybe even how you rank with the number of bonus points. They have a ranking system that says you rank X percentage out of all the users based upon the number of bonus points that you have. So Again, I'm going to touch on a couple other menus. That's really all that is of any note here. Again, this tool has so many features and so many things. I'm just trying to cover the things that I would normally use frequently. So again, this is the Key Tool Max screen that's we're going to use all the functionality of the Key Tool Max here. And I already touched on this next screen, control the dolphin, and the next screen, which is the mini OBD tool. So let's go back here and let's start running through some of these settings, features. One other thing I wanted to show you is the settings. So up here in the upper left-hand corner, if you can see it, of every one of these screens is a gear. If you click on that little gear, you're going to get some settings here, and you're going to be able to see your Wi-Fi connection, your language, your system settings. So it's good to know about this system setting menu here. Okay, so let me just kind of run through some of these things really quickly that we talked about, and we can go to question and answers. So what I have here is I just have a Circle Plus transponder key. We're going to set it up in here, and I'm going to demonstrate to you the reading and identifying of the transponder. So you would go here to transponder clone, and then you would go to read transponder. And so it reads the type. You see transponder type 46, the base type of the chip, PCF 7936, and some other information about the key, status unlocked, the crypto mode, and whether it's clonable or not clonable. That's important to understand. Your key tool is going to tell you when you interrogate one of these keys whether it's clonable or not clonable through the key tool. So make sure you always look at this clonable line. It says clonable here. If it wasn't clonable, it would say clone unable, which can get a little confusing. It's just a kind of an odd translation from Chinese to English. But that is reading and identifying of transponders. We could try another key here just so you can see that it will read, multiple IDs if you like. This is a Ford key. And you see 4D63. It's in right here, password bits. You can tell that this key's in 40-bit mode. It says DST40 here. All right, I'm going to go back to the main menu. Something I'd like to point out here before we go too far is on the opposite side of the key tool here, there is another button that you can push. And so if you push this button in, the power button is on the left side. This optional button here is on the right side. If you push it, you've got quick access to a few features. So instead of going to a couple menu strokes like I just did, you can read transponders, you can do transponder clone, you can do frequency detection, or there's actually a light. You can turn the light on just like on your cell phone. There's a small LED light on the back. So I've already showed you read and identify transponder. I'm just going to show you the frequency detection menu real quick. We go into this, and we take a Xhorse universal key that we have, put it up in here, and we're going to hold one of the buttons down. I don't know if you can hear it, but it's making an audible sound. And then you can also see a representation of the wavelength here, along with the frequency and along with the mode being the type of data that the remote is actually transmitting. And when you're using this menu button here on the side, or actually other menus of the key tool, they'll actually kind of stack in place. So if you remember, we hit this quick button on the side to go to the frequency detection, and now we're going to hit this left arrow to go back. And now we're back to the main key tool screen. So if you open 3 or 4 windows, you can back out and go back to the previous menus in order. So if you just wanted to quickly switch between functions, that's a good way to do it. So I can't really show you the antenna testing very easily, but I can show you how to get there. This antenna on the key tool is what you would use. You go in here, this is, again, testing the coil, transponder reading coil. You go in here to special functions, and you see ignition switch coil signal detection. Click on it, and then it's asking you to put the key tool antenna, which is this, close as you can to the ignition switch of the vehicle, insert the key and turn it on, and then you'll see some data here. You'll also hear an audible sound, and you'll see some visual indications there. So that would be the antenna coil tester. All right, so I'm going to show you how to create a remote here. We're just going to use an example. Even though That's another question I get. So even though I have this Xhorse universal remote headed key, and it looks to be a GM flip key, right? But it's universal, so it can actually be created to any application that's within the key tool. So I'm going to show you here quickly. For example, let's say I wanted to create a key, a remote headed key for maybe a Jeep Wrangler, say like, I don't know, 2006 to 2017. I would go vehicle remote, and then what I would do is I would scroll down to Jeep, click on Jeep, and now the first thing that's going to happen is the key tool is going to show you a whole bunch of pictures, and you can look through them to find your remote, but you can also hit this button here that says close, and now we're looking at by model. And so we scroll through here and we go to Wrangler, and then you see that it's kind of hard to see off the screen here. See, we've got some choices, but this is the one that we would be looking for here. Let's back up. I apologize, it's hard to see the screen as you're clicking on this video while I'm doing it, but it's trying to detect the remote, which obviously isn't in the coil. It's going to give an error here in a minute. We're going to go ahead and put this remote in, and we're going to see if it's going to detect it. All right, so try again. This is because we started the function before we actually got the remote in there. And so what you see it now, it is generating the remote to this specific application. And again, after this remote is generated, it would need to then be programmed to the vehicle. So there's also a second part of this process. Since we're creating this key here, you have to do this in a specific way. If you're making a remote headed key like we show here, you have got to, first off, you have got to create the remote, and then you've got to go and convert the type of chip in the key. If you do it the opposite way, these aren't going to work. I get this call all the time. It's kind of a ongoing, reoccurring issue that the customers say, well, I cloned the key and then I created the remote. Well, that's the wrong way to do it. You've got to create the remote first and then clone the key, or create the chip and program it. So what we're going to show you here is quickly how to create the transponder now that we have this done. And as you see, those menus do stack in there. So we're going to go here and we're going to go generate transponder, and we're going to go to ID 46 because that's the type of chip that we would be using in this Chrysler Dodge Jeep. We're going to put our key in here, and we're going to select this one, and we're going to tell it to generate. And as you see, we generated the transponder successfully. So now at this point, we could go to our, 2006 or so Wrangler. We could then program this key in, and we would have full functionality. But important thing to remember, when you're doing a flip key like this, you have to create the remote portion first and then the transponder, or it's not going to work for you. We could also show you how to create the prox key, which is real similar. It's a single step because it does the remote and the transponder for you. It takes a little bit longer. I don't know that we're going to go through that because I'm sure there's a million questions. I already see them all coming in. I'm trying to see here if there's anything else that I'd like to show you. I'm going to show you a super chip here real fast so that you can see how we could create something that can be programmed into a vehicle. I see that there was a comment there about the wrong remote. Well, I'll try to address that. I know what you're referencing to. It was the wrong selection, but thank you for that. I appreciate that. I have an Xhorse super chip that I put in here. And again, generate transponder. I want to just show you it will go ahead and create, again, another transponder here from this Xhorse super chip. And you can create these over and over. You can change them. You can unlock them. You could reuse them. These Xhorse super chips are very versatile. Again, you could use them for cloning. You can also use them for OBD key programming, like what I talked about there originally. And so I think probably the best thing to do, the questions are just pouring in. I can sit here and probably lecture all day, and it probably won't be very beneficial. So I have a few questions and answers that came in. I'm gonna turn my webcam back on, and so we're gonna go through these, and then we'll try to answer what we have here. So let me get my webcam back on. You'll probably still see the key tool and see my webcam now, which is fine. So one question that someone sent in to us from by email, they asked, if I do not see the remote key that I want to create listed in the app, can I create it by cloning an OEM remote or modifying the buttons of a remote that is created by an Xhorse tool? So the answer is no. If you don't see the remote that you want listed, you can't create it. Now there's a few caveats, right? So if you know the FCC ID of the remote that you're looking for, maybe it's not listed by year, make, and model, or maybe one of the remotes that is actually listed in the key tool doesn't have an FCC ID. So you can dig in a little deeper. You can look at the frequency, because you should be able to reference, you know, our site or someone else's site, and understand what frequency of a remote you need. And then you a lot of times can see a representation of a picture of the remote. You can always create a remote and try to program it. But as a general rule, if you've searched top and bottom through the remotes that are listed in this app and you don't see the one you want, then you can't use an Xhorse universal remote in this particular application. That's the short answer, and the long answer was you can search sometimes and find what you want, but no, you can't clone a factory remote somehow onto it, one of these Xhorse keys, or manipulate the buttons. Someone emailed about if you are creating a prox key and you see a little button down there on the left and it says downgrade prox key. They asked what that was. So personally, I've never used this feature, but I reached out to Xhorse and asked them about it. Their explanation to me was that in some of the early prox keys for Chinese vehicles, you would create a prox key with the tool, and then it had some sort of failure during the creation, and what would happen is it would then kind of be stuck in limbo, if you will, where you couldn't reuse it, you couldn't write a new file to it. It was basically bricked, if you will. So this downgrade prox key was a way to reset the universal prox key back to a virgin state. As far as I know and understanding from Xhorse, again, I've never used this feature, so I'm just telling you what they've told me, is that we're not using it any longer. It's something that basically was there just to fix a temporary problem, and it probably will be removed at some later version of this software. Another question was, when a transponder is cloned, does the blank transponder used become the same as the original? Yes. So if everything goes right, the Xhorse super chip that is a standalone chip or that's built into the flip key like I'm showing you, when it is cloned to a vehicle and the process is done properly, the vehicle should not be able to recognize the difference in those two keys. That's the point of cloning, so that you have two exact copies of that transponder, basically convincing the vehicle that they are the same key. So yes, they become the same. Somebody also asked, what's the difference in all the different chip types? You know, they said ID46, ID48. Well, so you need to understand what type of transponder that you need for the vehicle that you're working with. There's a lot of references out there, but basically these IDs that you see are the chip type, and they're derived from other blank transponders, okay? And so ID46 goes to a specific vehicle, ID48 to others. Basically, that's just the way to differentiate between the transponders, is these IDs. So those were all the questions that actually got sent in. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the Q&A here, and I'm going to ask Zena for her help here. And we're going to start at the top. These questions started coming in. So first one I see is, can we discuss what the super chip will not accomplish, so to speak? Well, I'm not sure exactly how to address that. The super chip does what it's intended to do. I'm not sure what failures or what you had. I have had some complaints, maybe this is it. I get tech support calls, oh, I cloned this key and it doesn't start the car, and they think that there's some incompatibility with the super chip. But what I've found is, as long as you get a successful message during cloning, most of the time the the failure on the cloned key using a super chip has to do with the range of the transponder to the ring in the vehicle. So a lot of times you can turn the transponder around in the opposite direction, and sometimes that can be hard because the shell is not meant to hold the transponder that way. But typically it's a range issue that I see, at least as I'm doing my own jobs here in Missouri and I'm doing technical support. That's basically what I see, is it's most often a range issue. So if that's not your question, go ahead and pop another one in here, and as we roll through these, hopefully we can get to them. So got another question here. How to extract the pin code on Hyundai Kia Philips 46 chip with a working program key using the VVDI Mini Key Tool and or Key Tool Max. Where is the menu feature? Okay, so that one is under special features, special functions. If you go here under special functions, and let's see here. Now don't make me to lie. I know that it's here. Well, that's embarrassing. I can't, I'm having trouble controlling this through the camera here. Well, for those of you that are laughing at me not being able to see this, I can't find it. I'm going to circle back to that one. I'm sorry. Okay. JB, love the key tool. One of my concerns is sometimes we try to generate a remote, such as for Kia Switchblade, to find out it's not in there or doesn't program. So my guess would be, obviously, if it's not in there, you're not going to be able to create it, and you're not going to be able to program it to the vehicle, right? If you do create it and it doesn't program to the vehicle, I would say you need to make sure that you created the right key or remote for the vehicle, and if it is correct, then obviously check to make sure nothing's wrong with the vehicle, check to make sure that your programming procedure is proper. I do see with a lot of these tools out there that are less expensive, there's a market of tools. Some of them are confusing. Maybe the translation from the language that they're written in to the language that you speak is confusing. So check that. But yeah, there are some remotes and some flip keys, some prox keys that are not available yet. And if you run into something that you see constantly, there is a feedback option on the tool. You can give feedback to Xhorse and just keep requesting that they develop that particular key if it's not there. One question is, what more can the Max do that the Mini does not? So basically, all the functions that I'm describing here today with regards to cloning and to remote creation, the Mini can handle all those. Basically, the Max, you don't have to have your cell phone or your tablet tied up to do it. And you can't obviously control a Dolphin with your Mini key tool, and you can't use the OBD, the Mini OBD adapter with your Mini key tool. But as for the features and functionality, basically everything we were discussing here can be used on the Mini key tool. The Max is just a different form factor, and maybe it's more convenient for you. At least I find it is. I got a question here. It says, I try many times to use universal remote. I write FCC successful. I'm not sure if that's a question or possibly a statement. I'm going to move on here. Keith Shepard says, can it change a 40-bit into an 80-bit? And I'm guessing you are asking about on a 4063 Ford key would be my guess. So as a rule with those keys, you can take an 80-bit key and program it to almost all 40-bit systems out there, okay? And you can keep doing that over and over and over again. And it is still 80-bit compatible and 40-bit compatible. And the moment that you program one of those 80-bit keys to an 80-bit vehicle, it then becomes 80-bit from then on out. As far as I know, there's no easy way to change those. I think that you can manually get in the extended pages on a different tool and change it. I honestly have never had the need or looked into it farther. I think there should be a way, but it's not easy. It's not, punch a button and it just happens. Just remember that once you program one of those Ford 80-bit keys to an 80-bit vehicle, for all intents and purposes, the easy answer is it stays 80-bit at that point. Oh, okay, so this is a continuation of, I try many times to use universal remote. I write FCC successful, but remote is not programmed with Key Tool Max. Still not 100% sure about your question there, Jimmy. We can try to circle back to that. Maybe I can, if we have time, I can get maybe some more clarification on your actual question there. Kevin asked, will there ever be a function to unlock remotes wirelessly in the future? I would say other than Toyota and Lexus smart keys, the answer would be no. I mean, you need physical connection to the printed circuit board when you unlock most of these keys. You're supplying voltage, you know, around 3 volts to the key, you know, so you would have to wirelessly transmit, you know, that voltage and that current to the key, you know. Nikola Tesla was working on something like that, but I don't know that it ever came to pass. So I would say no, remote unlocking functions are not going to be wireless on any tool except for those Toyota and Lexus smart keys. Will we be able to go back and watch this later today? Yeah, I believe this is being recorded since it is free webinar. We are recording it. I'm not exactly sure what format it's going to be available on, but yes, I believe the answer is it will be available later today or in the very near future. So Christian's asking, how would I be able to unlock the ID48 clone function? I believe you're probably asking about that 96-bit ID48 CAN feature, and you take 10 wireless remote keys that have never been used before. You configure them to anything that you want, anything that's in the tool. Doesn't even matter. You could just configure them for whatever to get it out of the way. And then you need to collect the bonus points by pushing more there by the bonus points on that screen that I showed you earlier. And then what you can do is go into the self-service tab and you can actually activate the ID48 96-bit cloning. But you have to first create those 10 wireless remotes that have never been created to anything. They have to be blank, virgin, if you will. Keith Shepard says, I have an original key tool. Does it work the same? So Keith, if you heard my answer about the mini key tool, the functionalities basically are the same with the mini key tool as the original tool. You just want to make sure that you have it fully updated so that it can use the super chip. That updating process can be a problem. We get a lot of calls about that. The biggest hiccup with updating the original key tool is if the version of software is too far behind, what you have to do is you have to update in stages. So pick an older version that's in between where you want to go and where you are now, update to that, maybe do that 2 or 3 times, work yourself up to the newest version, then you should have all these same features, Keith. Jamie says, already using VVDI mini key tool, is there any difference with the tool compared to the mini? So basically, I think we answered that question a couple times. Do you still have to connect the app on your phone? No, as you can see, it's self-contained, has its own app there. And then also interested in the OBD tool, what vehicles it can program. There's no list that I know of. I haven't got one of those OBD mini tools in my hands yet, so I can't really talk too much on it. I don't like to talk in theory. I'd rather talk in practical application, and I don't have that tool yet, Jamie, so sorry, can't answer that one. So Jerry asked, will there be updates for unlocking more remotes, and are there costs for them? You know, I don't know. That's not an answer that I really know, or question I know the answer to, Jerry. You'd have to visit with Xhorse about that. You could ask them in that chat function. We haven't seen a lot of developments recently with unlocking. Personally, I think that there might not be a lot more, but I don't know. It seems like there's a lot of tools on the market that already do key unlocking. So I think Xhorse will, you know, weigh those options and see if there's any market to be gained there, would be my guess. Okay, we've got a Q&A here from Sean McAuliffe, the owner of International Key Supply. Says, hey JB, it's Sean. We'll have a special for the Key Tool Max and miscellaneous accessories that we'll present at the end of this meeting. Okay, great. So if you're already tired of hearing my voice and already tired of seeing my face, stick it out, because it sounds like we're going to have some good discounts at the end. So it'll all be worth it. You know, it's no pain, no gain. So bear with me, and we'll have some sales here at the end. Tim Wagner says, can I cover the X27 chip more, which if you don't know, X27 is the proper name of Xhorse Super Chip. I think that I covered it a bit, Tim. If you want me to cover it more, go ahead and put another question, something specific maybe that I can answer. Jonathan says, can you still get them from Xhorse? I'm not sure which product you're asking about, Jonathan. If you're asking about this Key Tool Max, yeah, we have stock. We are receiving shipments in from Xhorse, so our supply chain is intact. Yeah, we can get products from Xhorse. Mobile Edge asks, does the Key Tool Max allow to unlock remotes? Yep, I think that we covered that. It's in there. A lot of people don't understand that it's in there. They think that it was the first key tool that did the unlocking only, but it's actually built into all these through the app. Bobby says, is the remote still usable if you do a generate clone in the wrong order? Yeah, you can start again. Just reuse it in the proper order and you'll be fine, Bobby. Harvey says, do you know what chip is needed for Dodge? Is there a search menu by vehicle? You are not sure what chip it is you need to clone. Okay, so if you're asking if you have a Dodge key, what transponder do you need to clone onto? And the simple answer is with this tool is a super chip. It's going to clone onto everything that the Xhorse platform is capable of cloning is going to clone onto a super chip. So you don't really need to know. Now, if I'm misunderstanding your question and you want to know what is the starting point for whatever specific Dodge here in your example, you could do the read and identify transponder option to see what you're working with, or check a reference. There's lots of references. You know, AutoSmart, the ILCO, Auto Truck key blank reference. You could check our website by year, make, and model. Tons of references to learn, you know, what the actual transponder type is in the OEM key. But as for cloning, the cloning chip that you'll need if you're using Xhorse is super chip. That's it. It's just that one chip. Chris says, you mentioned unlocking super chips. Would you expand on that? Well, if you've used a super chip, if you've created it for some other application and you want to unlock it and reuse it, you just go into the special functions under set type of super chip and just unlock it and then reuse it for something different. No problem. It's a couple of clicks and you can reuse it again. Brett says, if you generate the remote and chip in the wrong order, okay, yep, Brett, we already got that answer. If you generate it in the wrong order, you can just redo it, no problem. Kevin asked, if it's a wired remote, can I still generate it wirelessly? The answer is no. You'll have to generate it wired. You'll have to connect the adapter to the bottom of the Key Tool Max and take the board out of your wired remote and make sure you take the battery out as well, and then connect the connector to the board and create the key wired. You can't convert a wired universal key into wireless. Kareem says, have you ever had success cloning a remote? I've tried several times, but no avail. Everything else works except that. So Kareem, the remote cloning really only works on fixed code remotes. So anything that's rolling, I have not had any success. I have had success. You're able to maybe get it to work once or twice, and then it stops working. And I haven't spent a lot of time to look into it. It looks to me like Xhorse is trying to tell us that we should be able to clone rolling code remotes, but I've not had any success personally. Maybe other people have had, you know, different experience. I have been able to clone fixed code remotes, older Fords, garage door remotes, that sort of thing, older GMs, anything that's fixed code, you can clone those pretty easy and it works. But as for rolling code, I haven't had any success myself, lasting success anyways. John says, regarding the FCC ID, there are a few out there that are different remotes, but have the exact same FCC ID. One that jumps to mind is the Ford surfboard keys, the PEPS 2 and Euro. Is there a workaround for this if you search for FCC ID? No, the workaround is scrutinize what choices you've been given when you search by FCC ID. One of the big things that you can look at is if it's a proxy key, the transponder type, and also the transmitter frequency. That's going to help to narrow it down. If you don't know what the OEM prox key, transponder type, and frequency are, go to our website, look it up by year, make, and model. But no, there's not an easy solution for that. Sorry, John. Jesus says, how to unlock Honda vehicle remote. Honda vehicles are not listed on the menu. Okay, Jesus, so again, if you don't see the feature that you want listed, it's not currently there, it's something definitely I would encourage you to ask Xhorse about. There is some feedback and some chat on the tool like I've described before. Go in there, tell them what you're looking for, and maybe they'll have an option to add it in a later date for you. But if it's not there, you know, if it's not listed, chances are you're not going to be able to do it. John says, tell us about the difference between Xhorse wired remotes and Xhorse wireless remotes and when to use each. Okay, so the difference between a wired and a wireless remote is, first off, one has to be configured being connected by wire, and one has to be configured wirelessly. The wired remotes do not have a transponder built onto the board. So if you're going to use an old flip key that's wired, you would need to put a super chip inside the housing to do your cloning or your programming, or you could put a OEM transponder in it. That would be fine too, as long as the vehicle you're working with has the ability to program the remote separately. When to use which one is really up to you. The tool basically allows you to use wired or wireless most of the time. It'll tell you when you go in to create the remote which ones are allowed, wired or wireless. So you decide what works good for you. But the basic difference is the connection, the way that you have to connect them to the tool to configure them, and the fact that the wired keys do not have a super chip built onto the board. Kevin asks, is there an automatic remote ID function on the key tool or in the future? There is an automatic remote identification feature. Doesn't seem to work very reliably, at least in, in my experience. And again, like I said, I don't consider myself an expert on any subject matter. I've not been able to make it work. Maybe someone else has different experience. I've tried it. I haven't been too successful with it. Sorry, Kevin. Oh, so Tim blasted me with a lot of information here. He's asking about how to convert 7935, 7936, 7938, 7939. That is a huge long list, Tim. I don't think we're going to get time to do that. We'll circle back around to that. Maybe we can make some additional notes on the Q&A for that. Sorry, Tim, I think it's just too much. Paul says, does the Key Tool Max identify locked, unlocked Nissan Prox keys? Yeah, it can. You can go in that same function I showed you, and you can interrogate the key and see if it's locked or unlocked. You got to watch some of these keys. Get a lot of calls. People will scan a key, it says locked, but then they look at the, the crypto mode or the password mode, and they see that it's Manchester, and they don't understand that a key can physically be locked and have a Manchester password mode. And still be reusable. It's when you see locked and crypto when you really have a problem. So locked doesn't always mean locked, but yes, if you know what to look for, if you scrutinize the readings, you can tell if a Nissan Prox key is locked or any other Prox key for that matter. But do keep in mind, just because it says the word locked, don't always run to the fact that it didn't get unlocked properly or whatever the case is. Also look at that password mode, the crypto mode. See if it's in Manchester or see if it's in crypto, because that's important. Crypto typically means it needs unlocked. Password or Manchester typically means it's ready to be configured by the vehicle. So don't always buy into the locked and unlocked. It's not 100% without looking at the rest of the information you see there. Ron, I was going to show how to read that Kia and Hyundai PIN code, and as you see, I couldn't navigate to it on the menu. If I got time, I'll come back to it. I'm sorry. Boy, I won't say this name correctly. I'm going to spell it Y-I-A-N-N-A-K-I-S. He asks, can you use the Max tool to change the frequency on a remote? Sure. The universal remotes are just that. When you pick the specific configuration file that you send to the remote, it changes the frequency as you need it. So it's not like you need to buy a universal 315 megahertz remote or a universal 433 megahertz remote. The universal remote is just that universal. The Key Tool Max will change that frequency for you as needed. Gregory says, some remote programs only let you use the wired remote. I wonder if maybe you're on an old version of software or not using the Key Tool Max. Not to say that that's not true, Gregory. I haven't run into it, but it's totally possible. Like I said, everybody's experiences vary, so I'm not going to say that you're wrong. I just say I haven't run into it. Salim says, Subaru fobs have a PIN code. How do you deal with that? So we've talked with Xhorse about this a lot. There is no PIN code. They're not giving us the PIN code yet. I believe that the PIN code is the same on all these remotes they generate, but they haven't verified that. So Salim, what I would say is stay tuned, because they know this is a problem, that it needs to be worked through. And so right now there's no good solution for that. Isaac says, can you unlock the remote after you generate it? Yes. Can you change the type of chip after you generate it? Yes. Can you unlock the chip universal remote after it was programmed to a car? Yes. All three answers, yes. Aaron, can I program a chip to a car and reset it back? Yes, so that's the same question as Isaac. Thank you for that. No problem whatsoever. Donald said, will this unlock aftermarket and OEM procs, fobs, remote headed keys? No, Donald, it's only going to unlock OEM, not aftermarket, because the aftermarket keys have a different flash file, a set of operating instructions in them that are not the same as the OEM keys. So the unlocking capability is going to be limited to OEM keys. Timothy says, other than being an all-in-one unit and having the Bluetooth OBD tool, is there really any big difference or function with the Max and the Mini? So Timothy, with regards to what we're talking about here, the answer is no, there's no big difference. The big difference, like you said, is it has its own basically device built in, and it can control the Dolphin and the Mini OBD tool. So if you're just talking about key functionality, unlocking, wired and wireless, remotes, that sort of thing, cloning, no, there's really no fundamental difference between the Max and the Mini key tool. So let's see, Joseph's, oh, I think he was following up here. I guess I meant, are there any transponders the super chip will not clone generate? Okay, sorry for the confusion. No, no confusion whatsoever, Joseph. I just didn't quite understand the question. As far as I know, that there is no limitation that they can't clone or generate to. The caveat there is, obviously you have to see it in the menu. So if you go in the menu to generate a transponder and the transponder you want to generate is not physically on the tool, then of course it can't do it. But if it's listed, you should be able to do it with the super chip. Let's see, Stephen Hoffman here says, have you had success with 4D64 Y160? The chip Xhorse tries to generate to is a 4E64, which hasn't worked. I have been able to clone the unprogrammed 4D64 to a super chip and program it, but there was a range issue on some. So the answer is no, you're right on the money, Stephen. I have not had any success there with that 4D64. They used to allow you to clone that onto like a CN64 or a CX64. With the introduction of the super chip, they removed that. So no, the workaround that you're talking about is the only thing that I've had any success in doing. So you're spot on, and you're right there. I haven't had any success there either. Matilda says some remotes. Some remotes here with blue or red LED. How to differentiate when selecting to generate? I'm not sure your question, Matilda. If you want to expand on that, let me know. Phil says, does the Max need Wi-Fi connection to work? It does need Wi-Fi connection for some features. Obviously, if you want to access your bonus points, if you want to clone certain keys, like you need internet access to clone 4D, say, most 4D transponders, you need internet access to clone Philips 46 and to clone ID 48. So as a general rule, I tell most people leave their Key Tool Max connected to the Wi-Fi anytime they use it. Obviously, it's going to let you update the tool frequently, which you always want to do, and it's going to let you use some of these other features. So does it have to have Wi-Fi? No, but the features will be limited if you're not connected to Wi-Fi. David says, got in late. Will this be cataloged for later viewing? Yes, we're recording it. We will make it available to the best of my knowledge. Jeremy says, what's the difference between the Key Tool that has the button on it and the Mini and the Max? I think we probably discussed all that, Jeremy. If we missed anything, let me know. Rafi says, can we clone or generate GM procs that require 30-minute wait, as I was having trouble with that? I've had success cloning, generating these GM procs keys and then programming them either by onboard procedure or by using an OBD tool. So yes, I've had success with the universal procs keys on GM vehicles, even some of the newer ones, your Cruises and that sort of thing. Jamie says, so there's no functions on the Max that you're required to have it connected to the phone app like the Mini. No, Jamie, you need no connection to your own mobile device. Everything is self-contained in the Max. Tony says, if the car has an aftermarket alarm system, can the universal remote override them? That's a tough question to probably understand for sure, but I would say no. I mean, if you have an aftermarket alarm system that's active and it's preventing you from programming a key or preventing you from starting a car, you're going to need to either disable that aftermarket system or get a remote program to it. You know, go to the stereo shop, go online, grab one, program it to it. Usually what I do is just disconnect them. I mean, usually there's only a few connections, reconnect the wires back to factory, and then you know, forget about the universal alarm system, because typically they go bad very frequently and cause the customer all kinds of problems. Jamie, you're very welcome. Thanks for chiming back in there. Nikki says, where do you get the updates for the original key tool? You use the Xhorse upgrade kit. It's a piece of software, and then you connect that tool to your computer. So you can go to our website, internationalkeysupply.com, and you can scroll to the bottom of the main page. There's a column that says more info, and under more info, downloads, and you'll find the Xhorse upgrade kit. Now you'll also find that there is a document that we've written that tells you about a lot of the pitfalls and problems you might have, because that program does connect to a server in China. Windows is gonna see it as a security risk. You're gonna have difficulties most likely. Read the document first. Please, 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 please read that document first. It'll cover 99% of the questions you have, and then try to download and install the software. Read the document first, please, though. It really will help you. Alex says, do you know anything Xhorse is going to come out with? A new key cutting machine called the Panda. You know, Alex, other than what I've seen online, that's all I know. I haven't heard any, you know, official chatter, if you will. So the Panda is what it is right now, internet rumor until I know more about it. Darren says, does it clone garage remotes also? If they are a fixed code garage door remote, sure, you can clone it. As I talked about earlier, the rolling codes don't seem to work very well, but if it's an older fixed code system, Darren, yeah, you'll be able to clone it. Seth says, how do you unlock a Honda or GM chip? The easiest answer is on GM, you don't. You really wouldn't have a reason, I don't think, because of the cost of them. Honda, it depends on which chip you're talking about. Some of them can be unlocked if you know the crypto key that was used. Some of those keys, I think it's 8E. I always get 8E and 8C mixed up. There's there's one transponder that you can actually take a dump from the immobilizer. You can extrapolate the crypto key and unlock that transponder. But I mean, if you're talking about a Phillips 46 transponder for Honda and GM, there's probably no reason to unlock it. The time it would take and the cost of setting it up to make it happen, it's probably not worth it. So if you're asking about Phillips 46, Honda or GM, no unlocking, and I just don't know if there would be a good reason to. Brian says, where and when could we buy VVDI Renew? And I assume you're talking about those cradles. We've had trouble getting those in stock. We've asked. Xhorse has said that they're not discontinued. I'm not sure. That was the last word I got. Check back with our website or maybe talk with your sales rep. Sorry, Brian, I don't do a lot with sales. I interface with all the reps. We have some really good sales reps. You have a sales rep based upon your state, so you can call in, tell them what state you're in. Christine, our receptionist that answers the phone, she'd be more than happy to get you in contact with your rep. Daniel says, does this tool unlock currently locked transponder chips? So it depends what you're talking about. If you're just talking about a raw carbon transponder, the answer is no for the most part, unless it's super chip. If you're talking about a transponder on like a remote key, yes, there is some remote unlocking functions there, which you can see. We've talked about that a bit. Brian says, I can't see any of the questions. I'm not sure why that is, Brian, but we're going to make these available on a Word document. Zena is going to work her magic there, and we're going to get this in a palatable format. I don't know where it's going to be available, but Brian, you asked why I can't see the questions. I'm not sure. I'll look into that for future webinars.
Hey, JB.
Yeah, go ahead, Zena.
If you can quickly just check Slack for a sec. There's some information on the format that we're planning to, and also some info from Sean because he had to hop off this meeting.
Okay, I got it. Thank you very much. Okay, I've got the specials here, and looks like we're going to send out PowerPoint slides with the promos. Looks like that's how we're going to do the Q&A. It's going to come out to you guys by email. That's why we required you to authenticate through Zoom. So excellent. Thank you, Zena. Appreciate it. And there's just one small piece of the value that Zena brings here to us. She helps us all do a lot of different things like this. Okay, Joseph. So I am correct in assuming cloning ID48 can clone to a super chip. Yes, that's what you're going to use. You're going to use a super chip to do the cloning, whether it's ID48 or ID48 can. Excuse me 1 second. I need to take a drink of water, that is. So let's see. Timothy, where are we at here? Please go over the best way to sell these remotes, as most of my customers want key that looks the same. Also, are they going to make more keys with remote start? So Timothy, you know, that's probably a longer question than I have time to answer, but here's where I'll tell you how I sell them. Some of my customers are the same way, right? They want something that looks like OEM. So there is a lot of keys that, you know, look similar to OEM if you use the universal type suited for, you know, that application. Where I sell these a lot is customers who don't want to pay the money for a key, a flip key, a car lot, and I make them a separate remote. So for me, that's a big selling point. You know, you can set your price point. You can raise the price on your OEM keys a bit and offer these at a discounted rate to try to sell them. I'm not a sales expert, so that's probably a question that I'm not most suited to answer, but I sell them in that way, you know, as a cost savings for the customer. Because they don't want to pay for, you know, the expensive Kia flip key, just for an example. Christian says, under special functions, under the ID IC clone, does Xhorse sell the ID fobs or IC cards? Not that I know of. I was actually just experimenting with that recently, and it looks like you can generate to some other of those key fob type key cards that are out there made by other manufacturers. I hadn't got a chance to really fully test them, but I was able to write information to some of them. So as far as I know, Xhorse doesn't sell any of their own. Rob says, can you clone a cloned key? So as long as the cloned key starts the vehicle, in most instances, the answer is going to be, oh, wait a minute, maybe I should read farther. Can you clone a cloned key, such as if a customer presents you with a cloned key and doesn't have an original key? Yeah, okay, so I did get the question right. Yeah, in most cases, the answer is yes. As long as that key starts the vehicle, you should be able to clone it, even if you have to sniff data back and forth from the car. Should work okay. I have done it, it's worked, so should be fine. Kevin asked, where is the sniff function located? So the sniff function is going to be located under the transponder clone menu, and the tool is actually going to prompt you and tell you when you need to do the sniffing. It's going to show you a picture like if you were able to see the antenna coil tester. It's going to tell you to put the tip of the key tool, you know, this tip of the key tool here up against the ignition cylinder, just like you were sniffing for that antenna signal. And then you're going to do your sniffing that way. And then if you sniff, obviously you're going to need internet access to do that calculation. Laura says, seems people are asking questions on chat instead of here. Would you address those? Laura, I'm really sorry, I can't. Those guys that are asking there on chat might have missed the fact that I said to try to keep all these questions on the Q&A because there's such a large group. So I'm sorry, if we have time, if I'm able, I'll go back and look at some of those chats and try to add them to the Q&A that we're going to email out if we can. Keith asks, what's the current version? The current version of the key tool, maybe? Is that what you're asking, Keith? Looks like the current version is version 1.2.0, the global version. That's what my tool's on currently. So I'd say that's the most current version. We've got Anonymous here, says, is it possible to clone the chip for a Gen 4 Prox Chrysler key? Using super chip, it says it writes, but the car doesn't recognize it. I haven't tried that. I don't know if it's possible. So I would have to tell you I don't know. Sorry about that. Albert says, 2016 Fusion only shows a flip key. Can I make a non-remote? So there's a couple of options there, Albert. I'd have to look at the exact flip key you're talking about. You can most likely write it to a wired remote if it'll allow you. It just depends. I'd have to look at it specifically. I would need to know the exact one that you're looking at there on the 2016 Fusion. Another anonymous, I joined late. Is 48 free to use? And if not yet, how do you get it activated? So I think we covered that about using the the wireless remote keys, generate 10 of them, get the ID 48 cloning that way. Anonymous again, if the adapters are discontinued, I don't think the adapters are discontinued. At least the last word we got wasn't. I've seen, persistent information on the internet contrary to that. Everybody claims they are discontinued, but I haven't heard that. There are some documentation. There is some documentation out there about how to connect those. I believe we have it on our website under the download section. If it isn't there, I will make sure that it gets there today. Zena, if you don't mind, if you would make a note of that for me to check that if the application for connecting these remotes for unlocking is on the website, and then we'll get that up there. Bobby says, can you talk more about the mini OBD functions? No, Bobby, I really can't. It's all pretty much theory to me. I don't have one. Don't like to talk in theory, so we're going to kind of go past that. Isaac says, how do you identify HU66T6 and HU66T24? They both look alike when you read the chip. Well, if you look real carefully, you're going to see that one says CAN, one doesn't say CAN. So that's the big difference. And also, you also have the breakdown when you get to CAN chips, whether it's configured for Audi, Volkswagen, Seat, or Sakota. So you got to understand the difference in those. You got to start with the right formatting before you put the pre-coding on there, or it's not going to work. So if you're working on an Audi vehicle and you start with a TP23, a CAN Volkswagen transponder, it's not going to work when you write the pre-coding and program it. So make sure that you start with the right one. But I think, Isaac, if you dig into that menu a little bit more, you'll be able to see the difference. It's just not super clear at first glance. Timothy says, also does this unit program key DIY? I've never tried. The keys look similar. Actually, no, that's not true. I did try. There, at least on the wired side, Xhorse does know the difference. If you plug in a key DIY, it tells you not Xhorse remote. So they do know the difference on the wired side, Timothy. I haven't tried the wireless side. Isaac asks, where can you get the adapter to unlock other smart keys? I think we've talked about that. Carlos says, I noticed the Key Tool Max does not read if the Dodge Jeep smart key is locked or unlocked. Luckily, I have the old one. I don't know, Carlos. I'd have to look back on that. I thought that it did, but I'll double check on that. Looks like George is saying, can all style remotes be configured to all cars on the list? Yes, universal is universal. The only difference is if you have a prox key that you're trying to create, you have to use the universal prox key. You can't create it onto a wireless key that's not a prox key. But yeah, universal is just that. Thank you, George, for that question. Get it asked a lot. They say, well, don't you have a universal key for this? Because they don't see one that looks like the manufacturer of the key that they're looking for. Universal is universal. Isaac says, I generated a super chip to 8E chip and couldn't find a way to reverse that. Can I please show me how? Isaac, if you can email me about that, I can try to make you a video on that. We're already running over, so I want to try to get through some more of these questions. Salim says, can it recognize BMW comfort versus non-comfort access procs? I've never tried to do that. I would say that it should be capable of doing that, but I couldn't show you how to do it, Salim. I'd have to check into it. Tim says, have you had issues generating a super chip to 7935 and getting the chip to program to EWS? No, I've been able to use the super chip in place of 7935. I don't know what error you got, Tim, or what programmer you were using. Maybe it was Tango and maybe it gave you a specific error message. I don't know. If you wanted to email me about that more in depth, we could talk about it for sure. Ray asked, what is the AI button used for? So I don't know if you could see, but down here in the left corner, there's a little button that says AI. If you click on that, it brings up a scanner, a barcode scanner, and it's meant to scan the barcodes of the vehicles. I'm assuming AI is for artificial intelligence. It looks to me as if that feature is supposed to scan the barcode of your vehicle and then bring up pertinent information like the keyway, how to cut the key with the dolphin, which chip to use, which universal key. It doesn't seem to work though. I've tried it. Even if you put the VIN in, it doesn't have any information. My guess would be it's like most of these products that Xhorse develops, they start working on it based upon their market first and then roll it towards ours. So AI is supposed to identify what parts, keyways, and things you're using for the VIN of the vehicle. Doesn't seem to work right now. Kevin asks, can you update Max and original key tool with a Mac? In theory, yes, but I wouldn't, because you would have to use some other program to translate the Windows-based software on your Mac. If you have any kind of hiccups while you're doing that and you write the wrong firmware to one of these tools, you could easily turn it into a brick, a paperweight. I would recommend that you don't. In theory, is it possible? Sure, but I would not. I wouldn't try it. I've recommended against it to several customers. Peter asks, can you clone old Range Rover key 0708? If you're talking about a Range Rover that's bladed, that has a Phillips 46 transponder in it, sure, yeah. Depends on which exact Range Rover we're talking about, which system. But you can definitely put the key into the key tool, read it, see if it's clonable or clone unable, as they call it, and go from there. But if it's the one with Phillips 46 transponder, for sure. Kevin asked, what is generate emulator? So you can generate emulator is to basically simulate one of these keys to try it, to see the functionality before you actually create it. It's just going to emulate it. It doesn't stay working that way forever, just a way for you to test it. Kevin also asked, can you use generate emulator to turn off an alarm or even unlock a locked vehicle? I don't know the answer to that question. I never tried it in that way. I'm not sure you can even program that emulated key, so to speak, into the vehicle. So Kevin, I'm sorry, I don't know. Christian says, which manufacturer have you used that has worked for, the ID fobs? I actually used some that came from IEA, which are the maker of Z-Full. Sean says, what OBD functions is it capable of? Sorry, Sean, still don't know. Really, it's in development. I haven't got one of those tools, so I can't really tell you. Holly asks, is it possible to generate super chip to new Ford 128-bit chip? Not that I'm aware of, Holly. I haven't seen a way to do it. I mean, by the menus, it looks like they're persuading me to believe that it can be done, but I have tried it. I have created that super chip. I've then taken it to another device like a Tango or Miraclone and have interrogated, looked at some of the extended pages. Doesn't look the same to me. Don't think it works that way. I agree. It looks like it should, but as far as I know, the answer is no, you can't do that yet. Brian asks, can the tool successfully produce an 80-bit Ford chip for OBD programming? So the thing is, Brian, it'll create a 4D83, which is basically China's idea of 4D63. It's not very universally compatible. It works on a few vehicles. So the answer is not reliably. I would stick to a regular 4D63 carbon transponder that's already formatted. Maybe some of you have had different experience, but that they generate this 4D83, which is supposed to be 4D63 compatible, but in my experience, it's not very compatible. Charlie says, I with VW and Audi remotes generating. Have you had the same? Well, Charlie, I don't have a ton of VW and Audi in my market, but I have created some of the older flip keys, maybe say 2000 to 2004, 2005, all non-CAN vehicles. I haven't tried any of the newer CAN vehicles, so I can't say that I've had lots of success, but I have had some success. Matt asked, what's the difference in rolling codes, fixed codes, and encrypted codes? That's a super, super long answer, Matt, but the long and short of it is the rolling code changes the signal that's being transmitted to the vehicle. Almost every button press of the remote. Fixed code is it has the same code every time. Encrypted is like the rolling code, but it's not easily recognizable. If you interrupted, that's not the word I'm looking for. If you were able to grab the signal and look at it between the remote and the vehicle, it would be encrypted in a way that you couldn't easily identify that data. Matilda says, BMW CAS, can it be generated and or cloned? I think you're asking if you can clone a transponder for CAS. So if you have the right shell key, there are options to use a carbon transponder. In my experience, if you clone a a CAS key, it doesn't ever stay working. I don't know why. That's just my personal experience. Maybe somebody has other experience. I've never had them stay working. So in my opinion, it's not a viable solution to clone a CAS key. Holly asked, is it possible to clone the Xhorse remote to have the trunk button transmit as the remote start button on the original remote? Holly, as far as I know, there's no way to change these button configurations. What you see is what you get. If it has a trunk function, that's what it's going to send as trunk function. They do very few remote start function buttons. I'm not sure why. I don't know if there's some extra difficulty or what it is. Okay, looks like the questions are never ending. I'm going to try to get through a few more. I know we're about 20 minutes over. It looks like everybody's pretty well hanging in there with us. I see there's a couple people with their hands raised. I think that maybe they can't get in on the question and answer. So ladies, gentlemen, if you have your hand raised for a question, I'm going to lower all the hands and go ahead and put them back up if you had a question you can't get through on the Q&A for some reason, and I'll try to answer them. Here in just a minute. I'm going to run through these few more and then we'll open it up for a minute. I'd like to hear some voices, get some feedback on the class, and we'll terminate this session here because we've already half hour over. Julian, how do you use Renew Nissan Smart Key? The process is pretty simple. You pick the right Renew file, you take the Smart Key out of the case, you connect to the points on the board, and you click Renew. It writes the new flash file and makes it usable again. Jimmy says to unlock remotes, can you unlock with the key DIY wires? No, Jimmy, we looked into that. The pinout is different. You can't do it. We're actually looking at building an adapter for these. If that is something that people are interested in, let us know by email or whatever fashion. We looked at building a set of cable that have the clips like the Key DIY has and then the two probes. So if that's something that there's an overwhelming interest in, we will look more at that. Doug says, will this webinar be offered for viewing? Yep, we got that one covered, Doug. Sean, can you clone Dodge remote headed keys? You can clone the transponder, but you won't have any success cloning the remote portion of the key, Sean. Jerry, do you need cradles to unlock remotes? No, you could solder wires directly to the board or make yourself some set of adapters. You do not need the cradles. It just makes it easier. George says, I have the first VVDI. What would be the reason to upgrade? Maybe you like the functionality of the Max better. You like the fact that it can control the Dolphin. I'm imagining some point, George, they'll stop making updates for the original tool and only on the Max. So that might be the reason, but for now, there isn't a specific reason to upgrade unless you want to be able to control a Dolphin from the Max or the Mini OBD. Terry says, I'm sure this is a simple answer. Just opened the package and turned the unit on. It didn't give me the option to set the language, so it's locked on Chinese. Oh my word, Terry. That's happened several times. You probably accidentally pushed the wrong thing. Terry, do me a favor. After this webinar is over, call our main number. If you don't have it, it's 631-983-6096. Ask for me and I'll help you through it. It's not easy, but we'll get you there. Keith's interested in adapters. Mike's interested in adapters. Could not find Mercedes on the mini tool. Not sure about that, Mike. And Francisco, looks like he's thanking us for the meeting. I appreciate that, Francisco. Thank you. Looks like we have one person with their hand up. Let me see who it is. Oh, it is CS. So, incidentally, I'm sorry, CS. That wasn't purposeful. I have CS to where he can't talk. Let me allow him to talk. He's going to chime in here for a minute.
All right. JB, can you hear me okay?
I sure can, CS. Sorry about that.
No, you're fine.
Might come a little late. I didn't mean to. We joke about it all the time, CS and I usually make it to where he can't talk, but this time it wasn't the case. Go ahead, CS.
I just wanted to thank everybody for taking the time to attend this morning's meeting or this afternoon's meeting, depending on where you are. It seems like everybody's very enthusiastic about this product, and we have a lot of questions. So and JB can't stay on the phone or can't stay on the Zoom meeting forever, but what we're going to do is we are going to send out to you all a text version of all the questions and answers because we've been going pretty fast and I don't think everybody can remember everything that's been said. So we want you to have all the Q&A written down. If you guys just want to throw out all your questions, JB is going to have to wrap up here in the next couple minutes. So if you just want to send in your questions, if you have any more, JB will answer them off air, as it were, and then we will send out a text version of all the Q&A if that works for everyone. So JB, if you want to just wrap up anything, and I put in the chat real quick, if anybody has any questions about buying a product, getting a special on a product, any questions about International Key Supply as a company, any questions about anything at all, you can feel free to email me. My email is cs@internationalkeysupply.com. That's C like Charlie, S like Sam, @internationalkeysupply.com. I'll answer any questions you have. And so JB, if you just want to wrap up here in the next couple minutes, everybody else throw in any other questions you have and we'll get the answers to you after the meeting is over.
Appreciate that.
That's all I got for you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to take one more question. Looks like here from Art. Art, did you have a question? I see you have your hand raised. You'll have to unmute your microphone, Art. Maybe, there you go. Go ahead. Okay, Art, Ronnie, looks like you've got a question. Go ahead. Looks like you've got your mic muted and I can't unmute you. So either you don't have a mic hooked up or you have the control where I can't control it. So, okay, so really appreciate you guys joining us here today. Thank you again. If you guys want to, feel free to unmute your mics. If you want to have any final comments, if you want to just so we could hear your voices. I like this webinar and I like this format. It's a little impersonal because I don't get to hear or see your faces. So for me, that's it's tough. I'm adjusting to this, but I see a few more questions here. Or a few more things in the Q&A. Guys, I appreciate the encouragement. Jonathan here, thanks IKS for arranging this meeting. Very productive and beneficial for the whole Locksmith community. God bless everyone. Jonathan, thank you for that. And I pray the Lord blesses you as well. So thank you for that. Anything else anybody would like to give a verbal response? Feel free. It looks like I don't have anybody who can't specifically talk. So if you'd like to give any closing words, feel free. Go ahead. The floor is open.
I'm having trouble finding the blades for the Xhorse flip keys. Any suggestion on where I can find them?
Sure. On our website, use the key DIY blades.
Thank you.
Sure, of course, anytime. Anybody else? Anybody else have any parting words? I'd love to hear some voices. I mean, I was in a room here with 170 some people at once, but if anybody has anything, feel free. If not, again, we really, really appreciate you attending.
Thank you.
Stay safe out there. It's an interesting time that we're in and not positive, interesting. So I encourage you to use this time, be creative, maybe learn to trim a little fat in your business, maybe in your personal life. Maybe we can take some positive away from all this when we get to the other side of it. So really appreciate it, guys and gals. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, JB.
My pleasure.